Light that beam, because it's time for Nerdy for 30, the podcast where we talk about nerdy-ish movies for 30-ish minutes. We are back here again with another installation of the Summer of X-Men. Today, we're talking about Dark Phoenix. My name is Kevin Bauer, a.k.a. The Critic's Choice. With me, as always, is the People's Champ, Tim Keck.
Yes, sir.
Tim, what is your 5-second take on this movie?
To quote Nightcrawler, this movie is not as fun as I thought it was going to be. That's an actual quote from a character in this movie, and it's accurate. This movie is a handful of cool moments kind of thrown together without worrying about cohesion. That was not, something they were concerned about. Mm-hmm. And it is interesting to me how they make this entire movie, which is the Dark Phoenix, is like maybe one of their most famous stories. We've already had a movie on it. It's an exploration into Jean Grey's psyche, and yet the only characters that we explore in any depth are once again Professor X, Magneto, and Mystique for some reason. And then there's no Quicksilver scene. So that's my review. Kevin, do you have a 5-second review ready to go?
I'm going to be honest with you. I forgot to prep one, but I took exactly one note on this movie. That note is, I think you can see Professor X's bald cap in the poster.
What? No, that's not true.
I don't know, man. Check it out. They did a Drew
That's terrible podcasting content.
I mean, hey, we
can't show anyone
channel.
up. Yeah, okay. We'll put it up on YouTube.
We're not going to put it up on YouTube. Here, I'll drop. I'm in editing this. I'll drop the poster in right here. At this point, right here, I'm describing for the listener. I'm gonna just zoom in on the part that I think is the bald cap. I don't have the technology to put an arrow on there pointing at it. But if you Google Dark Phoenix poster, you can see it. They did a Drew Struzan poster for this thing, which I think is amazing. I don't think he's actually the guy that did it, but it's the style of artwork. He's the guy that did the posters for like the Goonies and the Indiana Jones movies and all these like awesome 80s iconic posters where you get all the different characters and there's a light source that's shining on all of them and everything's glowing in a cool way. They did that. The poster looks like it's for a much better movie than this actually is.
Sure. The poster does look cool. We just did Apocalypse. How does this compare to Apocalypse for you?
I think it's actually better. The thing that sucks is that they don't have a Quicksilver scene. If they had a Quicksilver scene, it's better, hands down. But I was shocked at how much worse Apocalypse was than I remember. And shockingly, how much more watchable Dark Phoenix was than I remember.
I agree. I remember it the exact same way. I thought Apocalypse was much better than it was, and Dark Phoenix this time was a lot more interesting than I remember it being. I thought it was okay. I checked the Rotten Tomato scores for both movies. You want to guess?
Oh boy, let's see. Apocalypse got to be a 47.
Oh, well, fan. We're doing the fan.
Oh, we're doing the fan.
Critics hated both of these. Actually, Dark Phoenix, the critics, I think, was like a 22.
Okay.
And I think Apocalypse was like a 45.
Okay. Hey, man, I was locked in. All right, fans.
That was good.
I'm thinking for Apocalypse, they probably rated it a little bit high because I had Psylocke in it. So I'm thinking fans on Apocalypse, we're probably going 72.
What was the other one? What do you think for Dark Phoenix?
Dark Phoenix, I think fans 56.
They're both 65.
Really?
Interesting, right? Huh. I would have thought that they were more polarizing, but it seems like kind of they're both satisfying in similar ways, I think, or unsatisfying in similar ways.
Wow.
Do you think the Dark Phoenix storyline is interesting? You've read the comics, right? For it, the comics.
I have.
The actual story is kind of a mess. It's all over the place. She's like brainwashed by the Hellfire Club, and then they're in space and she's on space trial. And then there's this weird trial by combat thing. And then she kills herself. Like it's incredibly weird. And yet for some reason, this is like the most popular X-Men storyline of all time.
Yeah. What's the deal with that, dude? There's so many better storylines than this.
Right. I find it interesting that people are so fascinated by this. Mm-hmm. And I think there are fun psychological things to be talking about with this. And I don't think either Dark Phoenix movie has capitalized on them. And I wanted your opinion on this because I started rewatching this movie today to try and like figure out what's wrong, because there's something about the Dark Phoenix that I don't find interesting. There's something about it that lacks a bite. And for me, I think it's because Jean Grey gets this energy. She becomes the Dark Phoenix, quote unquote, or she's possessed with this energy. For some reason in this movie, everything's still like not her fault. You know, like,
yeah,
she's possessed by this thing. She can't control it. She's scared. Why did I do that? She can't keep it in. She lashes out. They're like, she doesn't know what she's doing. She's going crazy. It doesn't feel like there's any ownership on Jean Grey's part that this is happening. When in the comics, I think what's compelling about the Dark Phoenix is, I thought the point was that it kind of accentuates feelings that are already there. Because this is like a Phoenix energy. I mean, this is energy. This is like life. It's burning. It's like creativity. It's amplification. So if she's got fears about something, it would amplify those. And if she's cocky, it would amplify that, et cetera, et cetera. And they don't really tap into that. Like she's horned up and wants to party, but like that isn't used against her, you know?
She's exactly what I would do if I got the Phoenix Force.
Dude, I'm partying all night. Who cares? And then she just kind of like lashes out at the party or something. There's like these bursts of it, as opposed to her getting swept up in an emotion and taking it too far. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, definitely.
Does that make sense?
Totally. It's intent, it's characterization, it's personality, it's philosophy. It's like things relating to do with character that we want versus what we're given, which is just an accident. Like that's not very interesting. I think it could be interesting in a world where Jean Grey is a fleshed out character, but that's not who we have. Wildly, like I think somehow this is still the best Jean Grey we've had on screen. I think Sophie Turner is better than the material they gave her in this, because there are moments where Jean as a character is almost interesting. And like, she's just, for so many of the X-Men comics, she's just an object. It's the same problem they have with so many Sue Storm storylines in the comics, where all she's doing are being something for the men to fight over, or like stressing out over her relationship with Reed. And like, it's just not, this is a character who's brilliant and can do so much and could be a feeling counterpart to Reed Richards in so many ways. And they don't use her as such. Jean, similar thing. This is another person who's a telepath like Charles Xavier, but doesn't have ostensibly the dodgy morals that Charles has. That's interesting. She's maybe the one person who can figure out some of the shit he's been doing. Like, it just really frustrates me that we've never seen a better characterization of her on screen. And I think if we had, we would feel more when we start to see her in trouble.
Yes, I agree. Is this the best Jean Grey we get? It might be.
Yeah, what else would it be?
I guess maybe the first X-Men movie, but that's really it. But she doesn't have a lot to do in that. I don't think she has a lot to do in this movie. Sophie Turner is a pretty limited actor, I think, and Apocalypse, I would say that those limitations are on full display. And I was pleasantly surprised how good she is in Dark Phoenix. I think she steps her game up. I think she's charismatic when she wants to be. Mm-hmm. She's like fun and confident in a way that like, I think embodies somebody who's like possessed by this thing. She's emotional. She just seems to have so much more control as an actor in this movie than she did in the previous movies. And I mean, you know, I was very impressed with her, honestly, and thought it worked. But I don't know if she has, there's the psychology isn't there for it, where it's like she's kind of just the victim the whole time, and then she does the right thing at the end, and it's over. You know, there's this moment at the end where they're like, what are you going to do? She's like, I'm going to protect my family. And I'm a real sucker for family stuff, family stories. Mm-hmm. There's nothing that would make me happier than seeing the X-Men as a family.
I have never gotten that impression from any of these X-Men movies.
No.
You know, they are not a family. I think in real life, I think the X-Men could be a family. And I think that's probably a very compelling way to present them. I don't think it's been presented that way in this movie. I don't think it's been presented that way in any of the movies. So a cool moment that feels like characterization, but is it? I don't think so. I think ultimately it's empty calories. Everything she does is just kind of superfluous and pretending to be interesting as opposed to like actual depth.
Yeah. I think also we could stand to see a little bit more of her being armed with this power and deciding to use it. I think she needs to make a strong decision to start using this power that she knows could corrupt her and starts her down this path to the point where it overtakes her. Having it just start off being very destructive. It's also super unclear because she already has had and displayed Phoenix powers in X-Men Apocalypse, but then she absorbs the space storm. So is the space storm just the dark part of the Phoenix? What are we meant to understand here? Really unclear.
I don't know. Is it amplify? This though seems like, yeah, it's weird. It seems like the Phoenix is her and this weird energy source is just energy that's amplifying this Phoenix persona in her.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't do the kind of mind block kind of like bipolar thing they did in the first series.
Right.
There isn't really Professor Xavier similarly has messed with her mind as she's a kid, but all he did was keep her a secret about her origins. And it doesn't seem like it seems like it was a dumb thing to do that he can't admit defeat on.
Mm-hmm.
I think it led to a great conversation with him and Beast at the table after the funeral. That's like a great scene. Yeah. I don't know why it takes place after the funeral. You'd think like they're not burying her the same day she died. So like there's probably a couple days. Magneto doesn't get an invite to the funeral. They know where he is.
Yeah.
There's just like a lot of questions around the whole funeral thing. And they also do Mystique so dirty in this. It's so stupid. And I'm not a Mystique fan. I don't think she makes sense on the X-Men. Her power doesn't make sense on the X-Men. She is not interesting to me past the first movie, honestly. So so it's good that she's gone, I guess, but they still did her for how significant she has been to that franchise. Mm-hmm. That's a weak way to go out.
It's crazy.
It really is.
Do you realize, I think in the relaunched X-Men franchise, or even if we look at the X-Men franchise overall, I think probably the highest body counts that we see are number 1, got to be Wolverine. Number 2, maybe Magneto. Number 3, Stabbin' Log. That piece of wood takes out Logan the same way, man. 2017. That Stabbin' Log, you better watch out. They need like Ninja Turtles backpacks just to keep those Stabbin' Logs away from them.
Wolverine, Magneto, Log, X-Men, assemble. To me, my X-Men. Storm, shock 'em, Log, do your thing. Like the idea of an entire X-Men battle just building up to like Apocalypse getting thrown against Log and just like it's like an instant KO. Like what if Log had been there? Log doesn't move, but for somehow it gets to every battle. Like it's not on the jet, it's not anywhere, but somehow it's the same Log with the same spikes. And it ends up KOing everybody.
Just dried blood, just that one dark branch from all the people it's stabbed over the years. Also, I love the Professor X like post game interview that he gives in front of all the kids, where he's like, "We had an incredible showing out here today."
The post game. That's so funny. I want to
thank everyone involved. This was incredible. Log, we couldn't have done it without you.
Shout out to Log again, my boy Log. Wherever you are, making his presence known on the bench.
What's your take on, we've talked a lot about Professor X and his various heel turns throughout the year. And I mean, this one really solidified it for the McAvoy Professor X in the same way that it was solidified for Patrick Stewart in Last Stand. What's your take on Professor X's reaction to like fame and everything in this movie?
I don't think this is as big a heel turn for Professor X as it is for Patrick Stewart. I think there is still a morality question in this. The Beast conversation is so good because I think they're both kind of right. Like James McAvoy or Professor X, I don't think his intention is to hold her back. I think he has a hard time admitting it because he's doing what he thought was best at the time. You know, it's like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a parenting tip that like was learned way too late. You know, like how many parents out there thought that shaking your baby was like a good thing, you know, build up those neck muscles. And then one day in the 80s, someone was like, what if we stopped shaking babies? And all the parents were like, no, that's how we've always done it in my family, because they can't come to grips with the idea that they've done anything to hurt their kids. Yeah. You know?
And that's why the people of America have weak necks now, Tim.
Oh, my God. I can barely keep my head up for this pod. I could barely keep my head up for this movie.
Unrelated.
Unrelated. Got a case of the weak neck during this movie. Chin to chest. There's I do think this Professor X is way more more complex in an interesting way. This guy manipulates people. His ego is out of control. I think that makes him human, and I think that makes him a complex, interesting character. I think the same thing is with Magneto. I'm kind of tired of this turn for Magneto. What do you think of Magneto once again being a good guy, being a bad guy, being a good guy? Or was your head spinning like mine was? My head would have been spinning if my neck could support it. But
you can't get torque like that on a neck from anybody post 1980.
These millennial necks can't turn so fast.
Snowflake necks. Dude, Magneto in these movies is the perfect wrestling heel. Because he's just going back and forth. It's like, oh, Magneto, he's tag teaming with Professor X. They're going for the belt together. They've done it. They've taken down the reigning tag team champs. But what's this? Magneto from the top rope. He's got a chair. He's controlling a chair magnetically with his mutant abilities.
This is like a niche thing, but there was a wrestler called The Big Show, who I think for years and years, it kind of became like his like bit was that every year they turned him. So he was like a heel one year, and his like finisher move, because he's like a giant, his like finisher is just a punch to the face. So it was always just, he's like by the side of the ring, he's tagging with the good guy, and then all of a sudden he punches him in the face, and now he's a bad guy. And then, you know, he's hanging out with the bad guy, then one day he punches him in the face, and now he's a good guy. And they just like did that back and forth like all the time. And it seems like it's like that for Magneto, like, oh, all sins forgiven, like we're good to go. And he even says to Professor X, like, I'm tired of your speeches. You know, you always have a speech. We always do this. A lot of the characters just keep calling out like how redundant all of this is. And it is redundant. Like, I'm tired of, like, Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy are the best thing about this new X-Men series. Their characters are the most flushed out. But once they figured out that, they really didn't spend any time with anyone else. And it's a crutch by the end of the last movie. They shouldn't be the focus of this.
No.
My thief, though, if it's a character, Cyclops, baby. Fucking really? Cyclops is awesome. Wow. I love Cyclops in this movie. Dude, he's so cool. He's like, you know, Dayton, like one of the X-Men. He's like at the party. He's neat. He has so many good lines in this. There's a part, there's like a confrontation with Professor X and Magneto, and they're talking back and forth like they have in every single movie. Every single movie, there's a fight where the two of them monologue to each other. And in the middle of this one, Cyclops goes, if you touch her, I'll fucking kill you. Yeah. And then they just go back to talking about what they were talking about. It's like, yo, what about that though? Like, let's linger on this thought. One of these guys made a big choice, so let's follow that thread a little bit.
It's incredible.
He has a great line too when like Professor X is like talking to Storm and Nightcrawler, like, I'm not going to ask you to come with me, and Cyclops immediately is like, I'm going to ask you. You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a leader, you know, that's like a guy who has cachet with his friends and he's asking them to do this. He is like he's asking his friends for help. I mean, he should be able to do that as like an X-Men with this team that he's developed. You know, Professor X is an adult. He has like a conscience, but this guy is like, yo, they got my girl. I needed my friends with me. I need my crew.
Oh, man.
And he assembles them and then heads out. Like, Cyclops looks so cool in this. And projecting forward, I think Cyclops is the key to the X-Men in the MCU. That's my projection.
Dude,
going forward.
I think you're right. I don't think the age is going to line up for this because I think they're going to go younger. I did see a rumor today that Glenn Powell is potentially being eyed for Cyclops. That would be the shit, dude. If they flip him and make him cool, because he's got some badass stuff. Cyclops and Astonishing X-Men in that one run, and I forget the name of it. It's whatever the run is. In isolation, favorite X-Men character. He is so fucking cool in that one arc. But for the rest of it, I'm kind of hit and miss on him. In this, I was mostly miss. I do feel like he was giving guy who got a girl who is way out of his league and is desperately, like, he's aware of it and he's desperately trying to hang on to her. That scene after she has first been possessed with the Dark Phoenix stuff when they're talking in the bedroom and she's like basically coming on to him and he's like, but Jane, I'm worried about you. She's blown him off the screen with charisma, and it is like a really good depiction of, I feel like, who those two characters are. So that one scene worked for me, but I want
disagree.
what you're describing. I want a situation where we have an X-Men team, they're high schoolers, like we have this like young team, or they're like basically college age. Like what if Xavier's school is basically like a community college they go to? So I want an X-Men team where they will have a mission that they want to do that Professor X doesn't want them to do. And after Professor X leaves, they're like, we're fucking going, right? Like their pride and their friend group is what's going to bring them out there to do whatever dumb mission they want to do. Like that's the kind of energy I want to see in one of these.
I think this is my pitch.
Hit me.
This is how much I've come up with so far. I think we go with Glenn Powell, your suggestion. I love Glenn Powell. Just saw Hitman. It's great. Watch it. Glenn Powell wrote it.
Out.
I just saw it in the theaters. He wrote it. He co-wrote it with somebody.
Shit.
It's fun. And he just gets to do a bunch of fun acting things. Like, it's a good time. Glenn Powell is a star.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was sold on it 100%. I think he's a movie star. I think he's got the goods. You make him Cyclops. Cyclops is an adult. You present him like a friggin' badass. Like Captain America, but like will just kill people who get in his way. Like that, you have to present him like he can just obliterate people because he can.
So you're going kind of like Cyclops was right, like rogue mutant extremist Cyclops in a way.
Yes. I'm talking like badass taking names Cyclops and a leader. I think we ditch Jean Grey entirely. Let's have him show up. If we're doing an MCU thing, it's like a crossover. Let's have him show up with Emma Frost and they're together. And then we've got a team of whoever else. I think Kitty Pryde is like maybe the next person up is like a really compelling lead in something. I just was reading like the newish Marauders, like the last few years, and her and Iceman are on this team, and she's like the leader of the Marauders, and she just like phases a gun into like two people's chests and just leaves it there. Jesus. And it's like, oh, these powers can be just absolutely effed up, and you can destroy people, and the fact that you don't is restraint. You know, it's you being a good person as opposed to like you really doing your thing. Like then they have a scene with Iceman and somebody gets hurt. So he loses his mind and he just walks through the side of this metal ship. And it's so cold that the metal shatters. And then he is just freezing the people inside. And he just goes up to a guy and he rips his arm off. And it's made of ice. So he can just rip the arm. It's like, that's the kind of shit I want in these X-Men. I want this like adults, and then we can introduce like kids underneath that. Maybe in that scenario, like Professor X is in jail, or they've got him kept. Maybe he's like the bad guy in this and they've kind of taken over. I think we need to present them as like badasses training kids that are maybe the heart of this thing. But I think you center it around a guy who's weaknesses are almost as strong as his strengths, and you make him into the kind of guy that pulls Jean Grey, that pulls Emma Frost, and you make him I think you have to up his badass factor. You need to have him saying things like, I'll fucking kill you, and all that good stuff. Like, man, it's so fun. It's just so fun watching Cyclops try it all. And they give him nothing. I mean, they give him like 2 things and then it's over. But like, it should have been about him. I mean, this is a movie about his like main love interest, and he's not a part of it.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think it should be. That's interesting because instinctually I was like, I think this should be a Jean Grey movie. It's called Dark Phoenix, but she is the villain of the movie. Like, she's Jaws. The movie's Jaws. She's Jaws.
You know who did Dark Phoenix better than the X-Men did?
Who?
Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness.
Oh.
Scarlet Witch does a better take on Dark Phoenix than Jean Grey does.
Yeah.
Like, you've watched a character who was a hero. Her impulses are taking over. She suffered a great loss, and now she is following this thread, and it's leading her to dark places. You know, like, I think that's where we should be going with a Phoenix character, is like a heel turn like that, where she's right, kind of, when she's doing it. Maybe not that she's right, but at least that you can see the thread between, like, you know, I feel betrayed by Professor X. I'm never going to let him control me again. And then that amplifies into something where she's not going to be controlled. There just needs to be some cause and effect there, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think we can keep all that. I think there's a lot of other things that we could have removed from this. I like that they got rid of the Hellfire Club associations. You maybe could have kept that as like a battle in the very beginning that they're doing instead of the astronauts. I think we definitely got to get rid of the aliens. I know the Shi'ar are very involved in the comic storyline, but I think introducing aliens into the X-Men when we haven't previously seen them in this franchise, it's a lot. You got too many things on the table. I think
you know why
really
they did
simple.
it? So they could do the train scene at the end.
Oh my
That's
God,
the
dude.
only reason.
And
the train scene is
what I wanted to bring up next.
the train scene's badass and simultaneously like not badass, like kind of at the same time. It's, I don't know. It's crazy. Would you want to hit off on the train? Where do you stand on it?
I think they did the train better the first time they did Dark Phoenix. I think the Last Stand, like convoy where they had the mutants captured, was a cooler version and a smaller version of the same fight sequence. I think that's way better. I did think it was so unbelievably stupid of them to label the enemies the MCU in this and drop this movie the same year that Endgame came out. Are you kidding me? You got to Endgame hits. You got to go in and digitally change those armbands. You cannot take that shot.
That's crazy. I didn't make that connection. It's so dumb. And they're just caught by people too, right? Like they're the cops.
Yeah, just normal. It's the mutant control unit, Tim, the famous MCU.
It's so stupid because then like I think the big fights are outside of the house, Magneto
cool
versus
fight.
Professor X, which is kind of cool. I mean, Beast is there making it dumb every chance he gets. Like Beast is so stupid. He's just bouncing on cars. He has trouble crossing traffic. At first, he tries to cross the street, but a car comes and crashes, and he's like having trouble navigating it. It's like, what a useless guy the Beast is. And then he's like tackling Cyclops. He's on top of Cyclops. Professor X like freezes his brain. And then instead of shooting him, Cyclops could have just blasted him away.
Yeah.
He does like a double leg kick and it sends Beast flying like over the top of a car. And he like dramatically rolls around. It's like there's so many moments in that where it's like, this is dumb.
Yeah.
You know, like Storm brings down a lightning bolt to like separate a guy's braid and doesn't hit him with it.
It's like, guy, man. Oh,
what are we doing? What are we doing in this?
I could
and then
be
the
making this
train.
up. I feel like I remember an interview with the braid guy online. Maybe he popped up on Instagram for you back then or something. I feel like I remember that guy posting something that was like, just finished shooting on X-Men Dark Dark Phoenix, can't wait for you to see this character we've worked on come to life on the screen. Like, I'm really proud of everything that I did on the set, and it's Braid Guy. Like, none of it made it to the screen because none of it was ever going to make it to the screen. And it just breaks my heart to see someone get rope-a-dope like that and think that they're doing something more than just being Braid Guy.
I think Braid Guy's okay.
You keep Braid Guy?
On rewatch.
You keep him around?
I think there's obviously better choices. I think there's, you could just easily come up with something that's better than that. But it's kind of neat, I guess. He's a fighter.
Yeah.
He's like a physical hand-to-hand fighter, which is what they wanted for that scene. And then they're doing this thing on the train. So they don't want to introduce a guy like Pyro. They want to introduce somebody who's doing like hand-to-hand combat.
Sure.
And as far as X-Men powers, I don't know who. I mean, Spike would be better in my opinion, like shooting spikes at people, or like I don't know. I feel like there's other people that could be doing this.
We want
I
Spike
definitely
back.
want Spike.
We all watched X-Men Evolution. We fucking want Spike back.
Want Spike in live action. He's awesome. Yeah, that's like a weird scene, and the Magneto strains to lift the subway out of the ground for no real reason. It's really hard for him. The last movie we saw him almost destroy the entire planet, but lifting a subway car, impossible. And then on the train, he just crushes a train car, and that's way easier for him, and it looks way cooler and is more awesome. It just seems like there's a lot of like, it's like one step forward, one step back, and you kind of end up at a 65 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
Magneto, tries and stab her in the face with like a part of the rail. And then also just like, he could just piled cars in front of the door. I don't know. I don't know. I like the battle. The Nightcrawler thing is kind of neat, where the two psychics are fighting for Nightcrawler. And it was cool to see. I felt terrible, but it was cool to see him bounce around and help other people. Like, that's like a taste of what they should be doing more in these movies. Is Nightcrawler helps Cyclops. Professor X is like in his head, like coordinating stuff, and is like, get me inside, reaches out a hand, and Nightcrawler's there. Like, that kind of stuff I love, them helping each other out. Very cool. It's what separates you from the bad guys. And they don't do enough of it. And then on the train, it's kind of a free for all. Everyone kind of does whatever they feel like.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before, but that moment in the beginning where they drop Cyclops down and he gets to launch a giant optic blast through the jet, that's a cool moment because it suggests this teamwork. It suggests this history of them working together and coming up with ideas for each other's powers, which is really neat. The Nightcrawler thing feels just like that too. There's hints of what it could be in here, but we still didn't quite get there.
Yeah, I hated the Nightcrawler gun or the Cyclops gun initially, but on rewatch, I kind of like it. I agree with you. I see that as like potential of the group. Do you like the fighting on the train? Do you agree that like it has to be a faceless enemy in order for, like, we know they're aliens. Otherwise, it'd be pretty tough to watch Magneto stabbing them in the face with just random pieces of metal he's ripping off the train, right?
Yeah, I think.
Could you do that with another bad guy, I guess is the question.
It's tough. You could do it with like, I mean, all right. So we had done this a long time ago. This is actually an important movie for us because a long time ago we recorded a pilot for a show we never moved forward with, which was The Rewritables. And we did it on Dark Phoenix. So we recorded for 3 hours in an extremely hot room 5 years ago talking about this movie. So I remember one of the things that we talked about then, which is that you have to take big swings in these movies to do something that we haven't seen in the franchises previously. It's what makes it memorable. So like it's about finding something that sounds insane, but then ends up being kind of plausible and cool, like Magneto lifting the entire baseball stadium and using it to surround the White House.
Yeah.
I think we had pitched the idea back then of if you're going to have like faceless villains, we pitched the idea of maybe she's like reanimating corpses and basically sending corpses at them or like bodies, because the only other alternative that we had is that she is using mutants from the school to attack the X-Men, at which point your goal is just disarm. You can't like take people down. Magneto's not going to be he's not going to be stabbing people in the face. He's just going to be subduing people. But it's way more fun if in a scene like this, he's just unleashing. So, yeah.
Did we ever share that? Did we ever post that?
We never shared it. There's one part of
was
it. Was
that the one where it's like someone possesses the kids and then they have to fight the entire school?
Yes. And our solution for it, that again is like, I think this is right on the line. This is something that could be infamous for dragging a movie down, or it could be such an incredible X-Men movie moment. Because Jean Grey is doing this mind control, our solution is that the X-Men have to fight back with the only thing they know that can block mind control, Magneto helmets. So our pitch for the finale was that it was all the X-Men in Magneto helmets trying to subdue the kids from the school and take down Jean. I still think that's a cool finale. I forgot the train fight was the finale because I remembered what we had pitched, and this is the first time I've seen this since.
Dude, that's so... I forgot what a great idea that was. Honestly, defeating the kids by putting Magneto helmets on them is pretty cool too.
Pretty sick. Also would give us some of the subtext back of, they're converting over to Magneto's ideology instead of Professor X's, because Professor X's got us here in the first place. We are winding down, but I want to launch one big thing on you, Tim, before we leave, and hope that this opens up a mailbag question. My question to you is, if the different X-Men had wrestling finishers, what would they be?
I don't know. Oh gosh, what would they be? That's a good one. God, beasts would be pretty bad. I think it would just be kind of like back in the day, there were like big guys who would just like hug somebody and then they would pass out, I bet that's kind of, yeah. Or like they just kind of like choke, they bear hug them so tight that they black out. Like Beast would probably do something like that, but then the person just gets like uncomfortable. So it'd be something like that. I mean, man, Quicksilver would do something off the ropes. You got anyone in mind?
My first riff for Beast was that he would like get them into a point where they're kind of like dizzy on their feet, like when you're about to do a Mortal Kombat fatality, and he would go up next to them and open a book so quick that it smacks them in the face and sends them flying. Hit the books.
Hit the
or just hit them with a book. Just hit them with an encyclopedia.
He slaps people with books and yells, "Hit the books!" And that's like his Mortal Kombat phrase. That could work.
Yeah.
What if we made just the lamest X-Men game possible?
I'm all in on this. Listener, let us know. Write us an email. Let us know what X-Men finisher you would want to see in this lame-ass video game. We'll be back here again next week. We're going to be doing New Mutants. Until then,
oh my God.
Thank you for listening, and stay nerdy, everybody. Bye.
Stay nerdy. Bye. I don't know if this is a finisher, but I was picturing Magneto just like anytime he wrestles like a female wrestler, he just keeps trying to put a ring on her. And he's like, then we're married. He just like, what if Magneto's just a desperate soul who like wants a wife really badly? And so his way of proposing is just trying to magnetically like slip a ring on different people's fingers.
It's like 5-year-old logic. Like, oh, you got the ring on. We're married.